right now?
You should. I sent you an invite to the actual.
Oh, like in my email, maybe, right?
Or yeah, like on my desk.
All right. Have you opened it, Eric?
Yeah, I see your peach.
What's that?
I just see your icon just really big. You know, your
Oh. So it doesn't.
fruit.
But it doesn't show. It doesn't show the screen.
No.
Huh?
No.
Do I have to do
It
something?
was screen share. You gotta share the screen.
Yeah, do
Is
that
that-
again, and
Yeah,
then
you gotta share the
click
screen.
on the new screen one, and then hit share. Bottom.
I have to double click. So can you now?
Oh
see
my
it?
god,
Perfect.
Inception.
That's perfect.
So can you see now something?
No.
See, you just got
No. I clicked it and then it said the live video broadcast will begin soon.
Maybe it's got a delay.
No, we have to show you live.
So why are we doing this?
Zero
So
viewers
that
now.
Ben and whatchamacallit can watch it when they're not here.
Uh,
So here's the YouTube page.
They post that in your browser.
Oops.
wow. Yeah, that's what I saw last week. That's pretty cool.
So
You see, they also
Inception
updated Chrome now. Like,
Oh.
yeah, see.
Okay, well, I clicked the link for the email. Let me try this link that you. That's weird. I'll try this link that you just gave me. Hold
It's a
on.
little delayed.
Yeah, because it hasn't pulled up the YouTube page. Oh.
All right, I should probably close that part. Whoops.
Okay, that worked.
All right. So I need to get desktop 34.
You guys play like board games or something. You should stream it live on YouTube. You'll get a following. You can stream like Chris Dirks went out beating squirrels.
Yeah.
So for today's
Yeah.
episode of the Squirrel Whisperer.
Oh, my music again. All right. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So to show you what, Red Hawk. Show you what it actually looks like the finished product, and then we'll work backwards. We'll go to Red Hawk. So 3 rings. Oh wait, no, not 3 rings. Red Hawk.
Okay.
And so you'll see that all these services are what's required for Public Works to work in the current version that we're working on, so in Trunk. So it requires all of these. And you'll see that there's a new one, as opposed to version 1, doesn't have notification server. So we've added this dependency to this version. So the way the versions work is the Public Works is the system that we're talking about. Trunk is the version, so if it was an actual release version, it'd be V1. And then the service name. So, and it only kind of looks weird with Public Works. It's Public Works.trunk.Selectron. So when we ever, so these two, whoops, like these two probably are exactly the same.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because we want to make each system independent of each other. So even in, because they might have different configurations, they might have different, whatever. So we always we will always separate all the different, and so we could even go further. So we could say, if we had a multi-tenant system with multiple customers on it, then it would start with the customer name, probably the environment, so like prod or test or, failover or test 2 or whatever, and then the system, and then the version, and then the, actual service name.
Right.
So each version, so each version, so this guy has an implicit version, but that we're versioning, but we only really care about deploying a specific version of a system. So there's no need to actually version these guys in theory, even though we probably should at some point version our systems, our services, at least with the assembly. So like if you looked at Selectron
I
dot,
like that too.
what did I look at? Configuration dot server. And if you looked at the properties of this, it'd probably be nice to see the actual version of this particular service. And so, but I don't know. That's just something, that we might want to do.
Is your goal in this development and testing, or is it possibly hosting multiple customers on the same operating system? Or are we always going to split different customers out to different virtual machines?
What's your question?
Oh, is your goal for splitting out these versions just for development testing? Just so we can...
Nothing. I would never do this much work for just development testing.
So eventually we can host multiple customers alongside each other.
Yeah, that's what you'd want, right? You won't want to have to spin up a new virtual machine every time you deploy a new system. That seems to...
I got to tell you, for Clayton County, being that they had 2 phone numbers pointed at it, and it's so nice, even just for the what you can do in
the front
CXP.
CXP.
Yeah. it's
Yeah,
just
so
awesome.
having those
That
things
versioning
decoupled,
on this is great.
we're going to have a lot of flexibility.
Yes, thank you.
So anyway, so is there any questions about this particular naming convention?
Okay, so all of the work we're always going to do in trunk when it comes to TFS.
Yeah. So every time you make any changes to any of these, if you're working in version 1, then it's pushing these updates to version 1 on Red Hawk in our QA box, and then those same changes every time we're making changes to trunk. They're getting pushed out to here too. So they should be independent. And I'm thinking in CXP we probably should call our CXP applications, permits.trunk, so that we branch off of that. When we're done, when we create a new version, we're explicitly creating a version, so it sort of matches the same sort of convention that we have here. I haven't gotten around to doing that.
So how does V1 get deployed?
Through.
I mean, it's still the trunk, but it's being called V1 when it's deployed.
No, there's an actual branch. So maybe.
Okay.
So let's go back.
To TFS.
So if you go to, let's go to notification server doesn't have one. Open a new one. That button doesn't work. So public works.
Is this the versioning thing that you're working on, Landon?
It's done-ish.
But is that what you're demoing here?
Yeah. So you'll see that there's a release. So in source control, I don't know if everyone uses probably no one uses workspace like I do, but I can see both versions in my workspace. And so, but if you looked at publicworks.server, you can see that there's a trunk, and so this is where we're working, and then there's also releases, and so in releases there'll be multiple versions.
So at some point we say, okay, this is stable. We'll create a branch for it.
Yeah. Well, whenever Ryan says we're feature complete with a specific version, then we'll release to the release. So then we'll have to go through. So it'll be a little bit of work. So when Narayan says, okay, we're feature complete on version 1.1, then we'll go through each one of these services. So we'll know which services we need. So we'll just go to our list of services. Did I close it? We'll go to our list of services and then check if any changes have happened to any of these. So we may not change anything to half of these, the majority of these.
Right.
And so they won't get another version. They'll still be on version 1. And so, but we'll create, depending on the change, we'll create a version 1.1 or a version 2 of the services that have. So we'll have to look at the actual history and see have we made any breaking changes. And so we'll need to, it'll be probably nice to be able to streamline that to where we are.
So every service has its own version number.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, so we would just go in here and view history, and then see, sort of try to get an idea since we
Yeah,
branched.
We'll label it at a point where we created the version so we can see what's happened.
Yeah.
We'll label.
And so, and see what happened, and sort of make a decision of whether this is a minor release or major release, or there's no change, or there's just minor bug fixes that, and
So why does every service have its own version number? Shouldn't it be grouped by product type? Like all
because the
utility-
services live across multiple systems.
Yeah.
So if we're changing versions every time we release a system, Then-
Do every.
then we have a whole bunch of different versions for no reason.
I'm thinking about, when we expose the services, like for customers or partners, public, then when you upgrade the API and say, hey, we have pushed out new services in this version. So now our utility API is in version 3.0, then shouldn't all services in that utility API set be in version 3.0?
Well, they're all separate services, so. But I don't know. What do you mean? What are you having?
He's talking about having like an actual version for the API.
Right.
Well, that's just all in the URL or the endpoint they use to talk to our web services. The version will be in the endpoint URL, basically.
And I mean, we'll have to decide: do we upgrade them, or do we just have both services living next to each other, and so we're backwards compatible?
Right.
They hit a different URL for their services that they're consuming now, and I guess we would have to EOL them at some point, right? Because we're not going to continue to support them forever.
Right.
And so, but we would leave them, we could continue to have 6 or 7 different versions of its services out there, and they just can pick whether they want to upgrade or not.
We could eventually have a sandbox domain and then a production domain.
Right.
So-
Right. Okay.
So, okay, going back to Windows Explorer where you had the list of services, right now you just have V1. So basically it should be V1.0 or.
Well, I don't know how far we're going to go with the versioning.
Okay.
Whether we'll just go, I mean, I guess Narayan's already decided that, but at the point, that we branched off version
Right.
1. Did he call it version 1.0? Maybe he
Call
did.
it
1.0
1.0.
in the
So, and that's not difficult.
Are you using the labels for this versioning, or how are you accomplishing the versioning? I was wondering how that equates to release management too. When we want to build a release package, we use labels, right? To tell it like,
No, labels
No.
is to point at certain specific servers.
Tags. I think you're
Tags.
thinking tags.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
have you gotten to the release management step? Let's say
NTFS.
we want to deploy 1.0 to a customer, not trunk. How do we set up that release management package to deploy
So
version 1?
it would all be pointing to
It's
these.
the build process, right? It's the
Yeah, so the
you
build,
call
so
the
there's
build
a,
to do the release version, not the front version.
yeah, so there's 2.
Okay.
So then, so I've updated all the builds.
It's just a source repository package.
Yeah,
Right.
It's whatever this build is pointed at.
So each one of the services that I have versioned have a new version 1 deployment.
We just point
That are
this
point-
management at the underscore V1 version.
Yeah. So if you make any bug fixes or anything in V1, everyone automatically gets those that are getting that distribution. And so then you also have the initial deploy. So there's a deploy public works version 1. So there's no deploy public works trunk because we do that continuously anyway. So there's no need to set it up because it just organically got the new service. Whoops. The notification service because it needed it because we're working on it. So I didn't need to create a new deployment. But when we create version 1.1, we'll copy version 1 and then probably the build, and then we'll change the versioning or however we do it. It'll point to all the different versions of the releases. So then it's sort of a self-documented process where you could look at the build
See what version.
and see which version of each one of the products, or each version of a product, what versions of the services they use.
So we could have updated configuration server to version 4, but notification can still be version 1.
Right. It's just very similar to the way the packages work. They're sort of independent, versioning, and you sort of opt in when you want the new version. You opt into the new version. So it probably will just release them all as it's mostly like a package. We're releasing a package of services, and CXP just happens to be the front end for all these right now. So there's nothing much more in the deployment thing. They're basically the same. All these builds are basically the same. They're just pointing different solutions. That all makes sense, right? Okay, so in release management, so now we have, where we used to have release management would just test the specific the same thing that we were testing in our integration tests. Now the URL is different than the one we have in test, right? Because it's got publicworks.trunk instead of just selectron.configuration.server, right?
Right. Build, yeah.
So now the tests need to know what version they're deploying and what version they're testing and how to get to that URL. So it's a little different.
Does that apply when, say, Willamette deploys Bozeman and whoever next, like the new customers?
Whenever we move to this,
Are they going to be using this new same publicworks.trunk
Oh, I don't know.
or publicworks.v1, I guess, because they're actual customers?
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah. So, because I don't know. Well, I mean, you might need to do some work on the public works, because I didn't do any work on this stuff at all.
Is this cool?
I want to say v1, but
This one?
Yeah.
This one should be V1.
I don't know if it's ever been up.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
version 1.
Will it still work?
Well, you just showed us pointed to version 1, so yeah, it should work. Because that'll run the version 1, which runs all the version 1 ones, or which builds all the different stuff.
Yeah. Ben did that,
Yeah.
so I don't know quite. I'm assuming that's what he did.
Yeah.
That's logical. That he would point to. He repointed all the stuff that used to be pointing to trunk. He pointed it all to the version 1 releases of all this stuff for that particular build. So if we go to the one I've been working on, the notification server. But yeah. So now it looks a little different to where we used to have just a web deploy and an automated tests. We have a web deploy, and then we need to copy full files over for testing. So the way that, so I tell the tests, here, this is the URL that I want you to hit for testing purposes. But I need to replace that, kind of like what we're doing for these things, where we're replacing after, before deployment, we're finding and replacing all these and telling release management to find and replace these, this specific Unity config name, go find all those, and then replace them with this particular file. Is everyone familiar with how that works? So we do the same thing here, but the problem was, so I couldn't do it in automated tests. So what release management does is it builds, you got the build, right, and then you have a drop folder, and then release management runs one of these components, and then grabs the stuff out of the build folder, copies it onto your deployment machine, and then runs whatever deployment stuff is going to happen. And usually it's pointing to the files on the machine that you just copied over. Automated tests don't work that way. The automated tests, what they do is, really it's just a component. So you deploy the software onto the machine, and then you tell test manager, here's where the files are on the network. And you can't tell it you can't tell test manager, oh, go to this temporary folder on this machine you have no access to. And so we have to go to the share folder.
So that's what the copy folder.
So that's what this copy. So what we were doing was just going to that drop location. So we would just point to that drop location, and it'd be fine because the services were named the same as our development boxes, so the tests just worked. But now we need to change that installation. We have to change that URL. So what we do is we take all those DLLs and all those testing DLLs from our drop location, which is called package location, and it's got. So if you look at, let's get a visual. So 3 rings. 3 rings / builds. Oh no, not 3 rings. Red Hawk. 3 rings. Red Hawk. Builds. And then so when we're doing our deployment, so there's a deployment notification server, and then this is the package location. This is the newest one. So that package location is what the $sign package location is. And then I just go grab this folder. And what it's doing is it grabs that folder and then installs it in a temporary location called tests notification server.tests.publicworks.trunk. So if you go back to here, it probably got deleted, so that's the last step. But it would just drop it in here. It might be still here. Oh, it's still there. So it deletes everything out of there. Well, that's good. So, because I want to clean it up because I don't want to fill up 3 rings.
Right.
And so then it drops all those DLLs from the package location, the drop location, to this piece. After it installs that stuff, then it goes looks for test URL in the exe.config files, and it finds, and then it replaces test URL with the URL that I want it to test with, and then also a connection string. So if we need to connect to the database, here's the connection string to the database that particular test is using. And then we run the automated test. So then instead of telling it the package location like we used to, where the build path is, we now tell it that temporary test location. So we're saying, oh, this is where the tests are in this temporary, where I copied over and changed the config. And then I go and clean up that folder. And then this QA does the same thing. There's very little difference except for, the connection string is going to be relay Ivory RQA instead of Red Hawk. And since it's deleted, I just go ahead and copy it again. I don't want to make any assumptions that, that particular build. And I'm going to have to change those anyway because it might be slightly different. And so you see this connection string is slightly different. And so again, you just run it, and it's pointing to that same location. So you just copy and paste.
Yeah, I guess when we build a full deployment sequence, we're going to be assembling all these excerpts from each subcomponent into one long, sequence.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we probably want to do, this may be more of a temporary fix, is make this component smarter, where it's going and doing this stuff for us, so that we can just drop
component or something.
Yeah, so that we can just drop this guy in and it does this stuff automatically for us. We don't have to do that work. But that seemed like a lot more work than just this this piece to just get it working. And so.
Does this really have to be done for every single deployment? Yeah.
For every service, yeah. So
version 1 and version 2, build.
Well, not just public works, but the issue we had with permits when we were trying to get.
Oh yeah.
Running with
so
permits.
you'll see Public Works has the same.
Yeah. So you did them already. Wow.
And so, but it doesn't need any connection string. So
I
don't know if we should make specific ones for specific, because that doesn't, the tests, this is the tests.
Right.
So you want to look at how does this test URL, how does this work on my dev box? I guess is the last question. Why do the integration tests still work? And so if you go look at notification server, let's see if they work.
If those tests fail, the release fails, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you can pick back up at that step instead of starting all over.
And so we have our list of integration tests. Oops. And we run them. Let's see if it works. And so you see they're still working on my machine, even though my machine is just the URL for notification servers, Selectron, blah, blah, blah. So for each one of these tests, you now need to have a configuration that says gives it the app name, which is up here. It's coming out of the app config. So there's a site name. And we just haven't called app name. I don't know why it's different. And so that site name comes from the app config for that integration test. Where is it? Right here. So app settings, right here. So that's site name. So that's what our development machines are. So but so how I make this change to __ test URL is using the transform. So since our deployments use development build, it'll go and find the key in the app settings. So this is just a normal transform. This is using Slow Cheetah though, instead of, because you don't get that for free. With web configs you do, but for some reason they didn't add it to app config. So there's a dependency called Slow Cheetah that you have to add to these. And there's also a plugin that makes this easier that gives you this little button at transform that'll generate all these files for you and then make it look pretty. So I don't know what it looks like on your guys' machines if you don't have Slow Cheetah installed. It's probably just a bunch of app configs right next to this guy. But anyway, so if we build this normally under debug in our tests, open folder. In debug, and you look at our config, it still has Selectron.notification server, right? If we build it, notification server. Did I do that? There we go. If we build it under development, build. And we go look at the development folder under here. Properties. Oops, no, not properties. We'll open it. It now has test URL in there and connection string. So now that's what the build machine will build. And then release management can go and find these and replace them. And so you'll see that they need to match. There's this __ connection string. And they need to match exactly what this said, this URL, or this name of this configuration. So that's how release management finds them and replaces them. You have __ whatever your replacement string is __. And so that's how we get the tests working, and we have different versions deployed on the same machine. And so in theory, if you go to configuration base, you might have noticed that I've now split up Red Hawk to have 3 different systems. We have our global system, default system. What are we calling that? I don't know. And then you have, this is the permit system, a public works system, and a business license system. And so I wanted to put comments on the side, but comments are not valid, Jason. So I just made an underscore comment, which is in JSON JavaScript world is a private. So no one should access, make a configuration called comment, hopefully.
What would happen to all those one-offs like dog license, all that?
Well, I don't know.
Will those be like new system?
Well, in theory, business license should be in here, right? But
Right. Shouldn't be here.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
right.
we made the
Made
mistake.
that, right,
yeah,
right,
so
right. Okay, that's why. Okay.
I would just assume that you would either have it over here in that particular deployment for that customer. You could just have a different system and different categories or whatever for that.
Right.
So you could just save it one-off. If you even use the config. Maybe everything's hard-coded in this
Hard-coded, right.
one-off. There's nothing configurable. So
Right, probably.
who knows, right? Or they may come up with their own configuration schema.
Right.
It doesn't matter, really,
Right.
well, how they end up doing the one-offs.
So how do you have 6 keep building the connectors based on the variation here?
Well, in not presentation. All the URLs should be config values. So you see now for the public works system, all of them are pointing to trunk.
And so those will be manually set up as part of the deployment, right?
Yeah, and so I mean this could all be possibly automated. So in the future, say.
Way future.
So in the way future, when a project manager is setting up a new system, they would tell you, okay, I'm setting up this is the customer name, this is, I'm setting up prod and test or something,
Right.
and these are the products I'm setting up.
Yeah.
And it would go, and whatever that tool is, would go and build all your URLs for you, and know how to set all these configs. Yeah, and then it also, and then it would go through the steps. It's like, do you allow payments? So you check those, and it would set all these other configurations, right? And then, maybe some of the stuff would be set up later, or as part of the questionnaire or whatever. And so so what ends up happening? Let's say they're hosted. So as soon as they hit, create, that guy just kicks off a release management build and builds all that stuff, and knows what configuration to use, and knows the system ID because you set it all up, and then it just deploys it to our, either our testing environment so that we can have a start.
Yeah.
And then it's done, and then it's there, and it should be all configured and ready to go, and so someone can start, working on whatever customizations or whatever that need to happen.
It'll be interesting to see as we deploy these 2 or 3 first ones, hosted solutions. We should measure how much time you're spending on setup, and then building the tool and see how much we reduce that time.
Yeah, because all their time now shouldn't really even be dev time, I don't think. Setting up a new system, it's all config and it's all deploying. So we would just have another, you would have our production box already built. Or, even in a fantasy world, you could hook in your virtual, Hyper-V server. I'm sure that has some sort of API where you could spin up another machine, and have that machine be that customer, and you deploy that stuff to that new machine, and you configure it however you want from some image. And then deploy these services to it and all the CXP and all the other stuff that is required. And that's not unreasonable to think that could be possible, and that could all be driven by some tool that a project manager uses. Well, PCI wants you to automate this stuff, so I don't think it's a big.
You don't have to go and touch stuff.
They don't want you to touch stuff. They want, they want it to be automated anyway. So there should be. I mean, that was a big part of what you read when you do your testing. It says you should automate as much of your build process as possible, and your build and update process as possible, because then that allows less for human error. And,
More protocol procedures.
right. And so I don't think this will work better, especially as PCI goes forward. It's probably going to be, version 4 or version 5. You're probably going to have less and less actual human interaction with these systems.
The only time we've spent really on the limit on development inside of relay projects, I guess, that was on prompt management stuff and building the tools that we ended up having to use to manage the prompts.
And there is also going to be situations where the customer would want something very custom, like a FAQ maybe or whatever, or like dog license.
Yeah, or voice attorney.
Yeah, something like that, right? So that definitely needs to be built outside of Relay. But then how do you integrate that stuff into Relay? That's something we haven't. Right. I mean, not with this, but say it's a main menu where they say press 1 for attorney, press 2 for something, or
a lot of the components for the one-offs will still be the relay components. It'll just be CXP will be a one-off, and
right.
Their version of public works or their version of permits, the dogleg or whatever it would be,
right,
unique to them.
Unique to them, right.
They could still use the Selectron notification, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, yes. But then the second part is how do we get the data and show it in the portal? That's another thing.
Oh, David found some headsets.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe he's wearing.
Or maybe it's just cold in his house.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how versioning works. Any questions? Okay. Does anyone else have anything to show? We can try to switch users. No? Nothing, Eric? Nothing, Dave?
Nope.
All right.
Yeah, that's funny.
You always look funny with headphones on.
Why you're not wearing the Beats headphones?
I don't know where they are. I don't know where anything is. When you said to use headphones, I just scrambled and looked for whatever I could find.
All right. Oh, there's a viewer. We have a viewer. Is that you, Eric?
Yeah, he's looking at the YouTube thing.
Oh, yeah, you are.
So are these all publicly available, or can you do private ones?
Yeah, we can do. I mean, I think it's only the people that you invite, and I can post it on my. Or it already did, maybe post it on my Hangouts wall, whatever the hell that's called.
Thank you, Grandma.
So yeah, we could. I don't know. I mean, we could play with it some more.
Yeah. Mike didn't get his makeup on before the Hangout started.
Oh. Yeah, you can make.
Oh, good.
We can enhance it.
Ooh.
Focus it.
Oh, just the center speaker gets focused.
Brighten it.
I look white.
Spotlight.
Oh, it's weird.
You look white in
And the
focus.
Brighton one.
And the Brighton one. Yeah, you
Yeah,
almost look like a white guy.
Hey,
Warm, smooth, black and white.
I like the black and white. It looks like a security camera or something.
What's that?
The black and
Oh
white.
yeah, the black and white one. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
We should.
But
All
It is public.
right. All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later.
All right, see you.